Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make lemon shortbread bars, and this is what they look like. On the bottom we have this buttery, crisp shortbread crust, and then on top of that we have this wonderfully tart and tangy lemon filling. And of course, lemon bars always have that garnish of powdered sugar. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. Now, we are making a large batch here, so you will need a 9 by 13 inch pan, which is 23 by 33 centimeters. And then you can butter your pan. I'm just going to spray it with a nonstick spray. And the other choice is you could line the bottom and sides of the pan with foil, which makes it a little easier for cleanup, but whichever way you'd like to do that. Now, the first thing, we're going to start with our shortbread crust. I'm going to make it in my food processor. You could make this by hand, or you could even use an electric mixer. The first thing you will need is 2 cups, which is 260 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And I'm just going to put 1/4 teaspoon, about 1 gram of salt, and then 1/2 cup, 60 grams. I'm using confectioner sugar, also known as powdered or icing sugar. Let's dump that in there. And then I'm just going to mix that together. So you could do that by hand just with a wire whisk or in your mixer. And then I'm going to add just a little, 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of pure vanilla extract, just for a little bit of flavoring. If you prefer not to have that, you can just leave that out. And then you will need 1 cup, 225 grams of cold butter. I'm using unsalted here because I prefer the flavor and I like to control the salt. But if you have a favorite salted butter, you could use that. And I did cut my butter into, fairly large chunks because it makes it a little easier to process. And if you're making this by hand, you could cut your butter into your flour mixture with either like a pastry blender or just your fingertips. Because what we're going to do here is just pulse this, or process, until it's all mixed together. We don't want a solid ball of dough here. We just want kind of clumps of the shortbread. I am just going to go with my spatula here, or just to make sure it's not sticking on the sides. Starting to come together there. Okay. Your food processor, when it starts to clump, the noise will change, and that's when you know too when to stop. So if you were doing this by hand, have patience. It takes a while to cut that butter into your flour, but see, this is what it's starting to clump together. So that's how you know. Now we'll just take our pan. Just gonna dump it all in. And then I'm just going to kind of even it out and press it down into, try to get an even layer as best as you can. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Just kind of run your hand, try to get it as even as possible. I know it's, and then press down your edges. I'm happy with that. And then I like to take a fork and then just lightly prick, not all the way through, just a bit. That helps to prevent it from puffing up as it bakes. And so, you know, everyone's oven is a little different, as I always say. But what I would say about 20 to 25 minutes. What we want to really pre-bake this crust, and that way it kind of prevents the lemon filling from seeping in and softening our shortbread. So what you want is it to be really golden brown around the edges, and then the center to be a light brown. So we're looking at 20 to say 25 minutes. Okay, so our shortbread base is done. As you can see, beautiful golden brown, especially around the edges, but all the way through. So leave your oven on, and we're going to make our lemon filling. Now, first you will need 1 cup, which is 240 milliliters of freshly squeezed lemon juice. How many lemons? I would always buy extra. I'm going to say like maybe 6, like large, about this size. But, you know, it's really hard to tell when you feel a lemon. If it kind of has some give, kind of soft, it usually gives more juice than the ones that are, you know, if you buy them and they're really hard. But I always buy a few extra. So the first thing what we need is we're going to need 2 tablespoons, which is 10 grams of the lemon zest, which is this outer lemon part. First, always wash your lemons. If you can, buy organic. And then to grate the peel, the zest, you can use one of these microplanes or just, you know, a box grater, the fine side. And then you just, when you grate, you just want the outer yellow. That white that's underneath, don't grate that because it's quite bitter. And then, once you do that, which I've already done, I kind of take my lemon and kind of press it down on the counter to soften it up, and then just cut it in half. You know, you can squeeze, you know, by hand, or I have one of these. I really like it. And then what you want is your measuring cup with a little strainer, because there's all the seeds and the other pith stuff that you don't want. So once you've done that, so I have my lemon juice and my lemon zest. So the one variable here when you're making anything, especially with lemon, is how tart or how sour our lemons are. Because if they're really tart, you might want to use a little more sugar than if they're not. So I find I use, for this amount, 1 cup of lemon juice, 240 milliliters, I use about 2.5 cups of granulated white sugar, which is about 500 grams. If you taste your lemon juice and it's really tart, you know, you can go up to about 3 cups, 600 grams of granulated white sugar. So, you know, I'm going to leave that up to you. And how tart do you like your lemon bars? But like I said, I'm using about 2.5 cups, 500 grams. And then, so I'm going to take my lemon zest, put that in there. Because it kind of bunches all up, I'm going to just put it into my sugar and then take a fork and kind of work it in there. I find that way, one, it flavors our sugar, so we'll get even more lemon flavor. And 2, that way I can break up that lemon zest because it's quite moist and it clumps. And I don't know about you, but when I bite into a lemon bar, I don't want like a big clump of zest. So just work that in. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we want to thicken our lemon filling. So we don't want it, once we cut the bars, we don't want the lemon filling to be runny. So I'm going to add a third of a cup, 85 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And just 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. And just mix that. So that's our dry. We have our wet, and okay. And I'm going to put that here. And we need eggs, of course. 6 large eggs, that's 300 grams of eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature. Now I'm doing this by hand. You could use your electric stand mixer or a hand mixer, but you know, it's good to get a little bit of a workout. So you want a large bowl, and with the wire whisk, just going to break those up. I want to get a little bit of air in here. That'll make your lemon filling a little lighter in texture. And then I'm not going to add all of my sugar at once, kind of a lot of sugar. I'm going to add it in stages, especially if you're doing it by hand. A little easier on the arm. And just slowly whisk it in. And a little more. Oh, just smell the lemon in here. It smells so good. And the last bit. See, it's getting a little a little harder to whisk here. Okay. My arm's sore, so I'm going to stop. And now I'm just going to switch to a spatula, pour in all that wonderful lemon juice, and stir, and that's it. Now, normally, what I would do when I'm not on camera is I would be making this lemon filling as my shortbread crust bakes. So then as soon as I take it out of the oven, I can just pour the lemon filling and then put it back in the oven. I'm just going to switch over. Okay, looks good. Okay, move all that. Okay, remember to use your mitts, that pan is hot. And then we're just going to pour that over the top. Now for the second baking, I find 25 to say 30 minutes. We just want to bake it until it sets. You will notice it the lemon filling does separate as it bakes, and you kind of get a crust at the top. But the best way that I find, because it's hard to, you look at it and it looks done, but is to just gently, when it's in the oven, shake it. And if it doesn't jiggle anymore, then it's done. So 25, check it around then, so 25 to 30 minutes. So our lemon shortbread bars are done. As you can see, if I wiggle it, set. So unfortunately, we cannot cut into these until they are completely cooled. So patience is needed. So put your pan on a wire rack and let them cool down. And then when we come back, we will cut them and try a piece. We are now ready to cut our lemon bars. So what I did was I chilled them to room temperature, then I refrigerated them for a few hours because I do find it easier to cut when the bars are a little chilled. So first you want to loosen around the edges, and then, as always, you can cut these as large or as small as you want. I do like to have a glass of hot water because I do find that helps because the lemon filling can stick to your knife. So if you find that, you can just dip it in your hot water and then wipe it off. These are quite rich. I'm cutting them in large squares, but you know, you might want to cut them in a little smaller. So there we are. And then you can take like either a spatula like this or a small one. Let's see if we can get this out. There we go. They should release, if you chill them, they should release fairly easily because you have that buttery shortbread on the bottom. So there we have it. Oh, look at that. And now, lemon bars are instantly, you know it's a lemon bar because you have the powdered sugar. I like to do this, put the powdered sugar on top just before serving or shortly before, because if I put them and then I let them sit overnight or something, that will dissolve into the bars, which is okay, but you know. So shortly before serving, do that, and then take a little bit here. Those are really good. What I like is we pre-baked that shortbread crust. So what that does is it gets nice and crisp, and then when you put the filling, it just, it doesn't seep in as much. So that's a good idea to always pre-bake your shortbread crust. But you have that buttery crispness of the shortbread and that tart and tangy, creamy lemon filling. The two of them together are just, I think, perfect. And then the dusting of the powdered sugar. You know, this makes a large batch. You can cover them and store them in the refrigerator for several days. You have to try these. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.